And probably when we go on here, I'll probably think of a bunch more.
Okay. Well, let's get into our telephone calls. 317-239-1070 is the number. Eric joins us first from Vincennes, Indiana. Hello, Eric.
Hello, gentlemen. Donald, thank you for taking my call.
Thanks, Eric.
I wanted to ask you about a gentleman that I admired for years, and we lost a couple of years ago, and that's Lou Palmer. I was wondering a couple of things on Lou, if you could look at his career, and also why wasn't he the voice of a 500 after we lost Sid? And I thank you for your time and look forward to your answer.
There was quite a bit of discussion at that time, and eventually he did become, he only did 2 years, 1988 and 1989, but Lou was on the network starting in 1958, and thank you for asking about him because he was a very special person in my life and somebody I admired greatly. But anyway, his first year on the network was 1958, and they put him up in Tier 3 because, quote, nothing ever happens up there, end quote, and they came around on the first lap, and we had the Ed Elysian Dick Rathman accident that eventually took the life of Pat O'Connor. It was like 15 cars involved. Don't ask me to describe that whole thing now, but Lou Palmer did this wonderful description of the accident basically on his first lap of competition. And so anyway, he was regularly on the network and for several years did the winner's interview. I don't recall exactly when that started, but he would work the pits and then go down and then do the winner's interview. And but anyway, he worked for WIBC, and he was from Syracuse, New York, and he ended up in the city. He was in the Army and stationed at Fort Benn. And so he liked it here and settled down, and I think he worked for one and maybe two other radio stations and then went on to IBC as doing news. So for many, many years, what he would do is basically take the month of May off. I mean, he wasn't taking it off, but he just left the news. He didn't do news and just spent the time out at the racetrack. And for the longest time, it was the only race he would do each year. And his grasp of the event was just phenomenal. And his drama, and he would do for years. They finally changed they started putting his reports into the news, but for year after year after year, it was quarter till and quarter past the hour, and you turn on, and then Lou would tell you everything you wanted to know in 2 minutes, and then 30 minutes later, even if nothing had happened in the meantime, he would give you a completely different take. And it was he would make a few notes, but most of it was off the top of his head. And I can tell you, working qualifications with Lou Palmer was just an absolute joy. And I was paired with him for 18 years. If being paired with is not too presumptuous, but I sort of sat with him and would do comments whenever he asked for them. And he used me a lot. And it was just fantastic to work with him because he was such a master. He would stand up most of the time, 1 foot on a stool, and wrap a pencil on the little desk in front of him, or not really a desk, but he would just rap on the tabletop, for want of a better term. And he used these amazing calls, and I didn't rehearse this, but I've got some of them in my mind, and I got to see if I can remember some of my favorites where he would do.
Well, the vamping in Victory Lane, and I've listened to some of these old broadcasts, and I will say as someone who has done Victory Lane for the last few years, he's the standard. He's what we'd all like to be. Not only did he have the God-given ability with that voice, but he could speak for 2 or 3 minutes with really nothing going on. Yes, there was something going on, but he was stalling until the winner would get the helmet off, the head sock off, take the drink of milk, kiss the princess, so forth, and he would describe it all, never saying or and.
Unlike me.
And well, unlike most of us. I'm telling you, words can't put it sufficiently of how good he was. I'm very disappointed I never had the chance to meet him.
Oh, well, let me tell you a couple of things. And he was a very private person, too, and I don't know how long we should do on this, but I mean, I can do Palmer for quite a while. But when he would do the news, I remember actually there was a snowstorm going on, dead winter, and I just happened to have the news on, and he said something, they go to the news, and he says, well, it's snowing outside. They said it was coming. Look out of the window, know that it is true. I remember that one.
Yeah, that sounds like something he would say.
What was it now? The car is red, the sky is blue, the flag is green, the hand is in the air. Then somebody would go qualifying, and then he said, I remember Gordon Smiley making a qualifying run in 1980, which was his first year. And he said, the crew are at the north end calculating the speeds, coming around for the final time, out of the fourth turn. They check the watches. Will they give him the yellow flag? No, they do not. They say, congratulations, man, you're in. And he would use the term man a lot. And then a real favorite of mine was on a qualifying day. It was the final qualifying day. And we'd had the first practice session, beautiful day, and so the track was down. So basically you're just waiting to form the qualifying line, and it was probably going to be a long, slow day. Somebody had had an accident the day before, and so he said, and we may say we expect to see so-and-so out very shortly. We didn't know whether we would see him or not because yesterday, he had this accident, and you may recall, out there practicing, building to qualifying speed. Suddenly, 143, it all went terribly wrong. Into the wall, hard. And then the visit to the hospital. And we suspected perhaps serious injuries. But there was injury. They examined him, and they released him. The wound was not so deep as a well, nor as wide as a church door. And that's which is a line out of Romeo and Juliet. And the joy of it was that was completely off the top of his head. And all the years that I worked with him, I'd never heard that line before, and he never used it again.
Wow.
And then just you would appreciate this, and I guess anybody else that's done radio, and you have to do your wrap-up. And most of what you see on TV, when somebody's doing a stand-up, I mean, very often, just to let the cat out of the bag. Sometimes what you're seeing is take 6.
Oh, sure.
See?
If it's going well.
And if it's going well. And so basically you've got to open the piece, and then you throw it. Then at some point, then a taped piece takes over when the footage comes up. So anyway, Lou, and now obviously we're back talking radio again. When qualifying was over, Lou would do 2 what they called wraps, and it would be like a minute and a half wrap up of the day's activity, and one would vary slightly from the other. Well, he would very, very rarely would flub, but once in a while he would. And the other thing too was that he was very I don't know if impatient would be the word, but he didn't like hanging around. So when the track shut down, he would call down the line and say, all right, man, I'm ready to record 2 at your leisure. When you're ready, 3, 2, 1. And
meaning,
you better be
I'm ready now. You better go.
So anyway, he did this thing, and there's wonderful, floating, glorious prose, and then he flubbed. And then he said, I'm sorry, man, we're going to have to start again. And at 3, 2, 1. And it was something completely different. It wasn't as if you'd sort of thought about what my opening's going to be. It was a completely different thought, and it was just as if his, the mouth just followed the brain, which I know is a brilliant statement. But how that man could do it, it was just a natural born talent, and for me, I think he was the best at what he did.
Yeah. Well, our opening callers the last 2 nights have catered to us, talking about Sid Collins and talking about Lou Palmer. Yeah. So, Eric, thank you very much. Anything else for us?
I was going to ask you if they're going to do the races on the night before the 500 and what races they're going to do. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, that's Mike Sarowick. And,
on the air, yes.
Yes, but it doesn't start until